Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the various steps of how to write a response paper. So this PowerPoint can be found in the folder, and I would suggest looking at it in the end. I'm going to walk you through the various steps of writing a response paper, and then we are going to look at the sample response essay based on the essay American Jerk. So if you look at the first slide, you're going to see the first three bullets are basically what we've done in the course so far. We've begun with the skills assessment, and when you broke down the skills assessment, you needed to understand the author's main point and the purpose really for writing his article. You had to know the main idea, you had to look at the main points that support that main idea, and then after you had the skills assessment, we basically did two summaries. In other words, you need to summarize all of the main points that the author makes. In this particular paper, we're going to take this one step further. If you look at the last bullet point, you will see that the purpose is to be able to respond or react to what the author has to say. And you have to be able to support or defend your point of view based on what the author has written. So what all is involved in writing a response paper? Well, you need to use critical reading skills. You have to identify the ideas, you need to identify the organization, and you have to figure out the purpose of the text. In terms of critical thinking, you're going to now begin to analyze and to evaluate the ideas and the text. Lastly, you're going to put it all together, and you're going to react in this in writing. You're going to briefly summarize the text's key ideas, but then you're going to state your opinion with appropriate details, quotations, and explanations. So a response paper is actually fun to do because you can now express what you think about a piece of writing. However, you need to do this in an organized way. In other words, you have to make sure that you include evidence that shows that you've understood what the text says and does. You need to react to the writer's ideas. And lastly, you're going to evaluate the text and the writer's strengths and weaknesses. What was good? What was bad? What could you have done better? What do you agree with or what do you disagree with? So as I just stated, you're basically going to have your opinion about the author's ideas and whether or not you agree or disagree with them. Pick some aspects of the original essay that you feel strongly enough to write about. Remember, there are no outside sources necessary other than the actual original article. Reading the first time, look for the answers to the following questions. What is the topic or the main problem or issue that the author is addressing? What is the author's central claim, his argument, or his point? In other words, you're looking for the main idea. What assumptions does the author make? And lastly, what evidence does the author present? So after you've read the text the first time and looked for the main idea, etc., you're going to read the text a second time. And this time, you're going to kind of look at the answers to these questions. How do I feel about what is being said? Is the author's claim supported sufficiently? Or do I need more evidence? Do I agree or disagree with the author? And lastly, what are some possible counter-arguments to the text's claims? If you don't agree with everything, that's fine, but then you need to come up with some counter-arguments as to why you do not agree. Now that you've read the text twice and you've answered those questions, the third step is to write a very short summary of the text. Paraphrase the author's thesis. In other words, you still have to come up with the main idea. Paraphrase the main supporting ideas or the evidence or the main topics that the author mentions. And lastly, paraphrase any other important ideas. This should be approximately 3 to 4 sentences long. Really no more than 4 sentences. Like any good piece of writing or any good argument, you are going to need to provide evidence to support the points that you're making. So your response requires that you provide evidence from the text to support your opinion, whether you agree or disagree. Consider what sort of evidence will best support your statements. You can choose from personal experience, or you can even bring in evidence from the text. When citing evidence from the text, you're going to be writing about some specific phrases or sentences from the text. Remember, don't just put in a quote, but make sure you explain the quote. Analyze the effectiveness of the text. Did what the author say help his argument or not? And again, respond to that particular piece of text. Do you agree or disagree? Okay, so this next slide really is one of the most important slides on this video because this is how you're going to structure your response. The very first thing you should do in the first paragraph is to begin with some kind of attention getter or a hook. This can be anything from a quote to a shocking statement, but it's something to draw the reader into your paper. Don't just begin with the actual paper. After you have the attention getter, the next sentence really has to contain the author's name, the name of the text, and then your main idea. Directly following that is the 3 to 4 sentence summary. At the end of your first paragraph, you're going to have a thesis statement. And the thesis statement is important because it provides the reader with the direction you are going. You need to basically state what your position is. Are you agreeing or are you disagreeing? Are you agreeing fully or partially? That needs to be stated in your thesis statement. That is probably the most important sentence in the entire paper. Because without a good thesis statement, it is not clear what your paper is going to be about. So the main question is to figure out, okay, what exactly are you going to write about? Well, look for some useful information in the essay that could apply or relate to some real life situations. If you can go beyond the text, that would be great. Really bring in your own personal experience with the topic. Use the keyword response method for generating ideas. Choose one or more keywords that describe your response. Are you angered, amused, surprised, annoyed, curious? In other words, you could say to yourself, after reading the essay, I felt really annoyed. And then explain why you felt annoyed. Give some examples what annoyed you. This is one way to help structure this essay. There are a couple of things that are just really important for you to remember. Make sure whatever you do, you give reasons, whether it's reasons for why you agree or reasons for why you disagree. Make sure you give examples and personal experience because that is on the rubric to bring in some of your personal experience. You can add, based on my experience, etc. Try to avoid using I agree or disagree, and we're going to look at the sample essay next, and you'll see how that author really doesn't talk about agreeing or disagreeing, but it is very clear what his or her stance is. Obviously, the last paragraph of your paper is going to be the conclusion. The conclusion will refer to your thesis statement, but don't simply restate it. In other words, what conclusion have you drawn throughout your paper? End the essay with a short summary of your response. You can add a new perspective about the article, the author, or the topic as well. Your conclusion should also be approximately 5 sentences long. So those are the basic steps in writing a response paper. In the next video that I show you, I'm going to walk you through the sample response.